So everyone, welcome to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting on Tuesday, May 20th. We are now going to call us all to order and have roll call.
Annie Adams.
Present.
Susan Jones.
Present.
Tommy Griscom. Choshi Huang.
Present.
Bruce Mickelson. Keenan Portis.
Present.
Sartak Prasad. Nancy Westcott.
Present.
And I'm Carmen Franks.
All right, so the first part of this lovely agenda that Carmen has put together is, are there any changes to the agenda? All right, seeing no changes, would anyone like to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
I will vote to approve.
I will second that motion.
All right, and so the minutes have been approved of the previous meeting. Do we have any public input? Seeing none, or hearing none, do we have any commissioner communications? I, for one, would be curious about that PACE meeting. Nancy? I also would be curious about your park. And Susan, I'd also be curious about the Ride of Silence.
That's an
And, oh, that's an announcement in Shoshi.
It was?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, okay. Okay, all right, got it.
Well, the PACE meeting was just a working meeting.
Yeah.
But PACE did walk in the marathon. We had 4 walkers who walked at a really fast pace, being this is our second year. We figured out who were good to walk with, and we walked with Charlie and Audrey Ishii, Charlie Smythe and Audrey Ishii, and they kept us going.
All right.
We went really fast for the 5K, and we hope to do it again next year with more people.
All right.
And I guess the other thing I'll say, PACE is in really good condition.
All right.
That's my
good to hear.
other news.
And how so? What do you mean in good condition?
It's
Functional.
very functional. It is really, it's great. It's a great organization.
That's fantastic to hear. And I'd help you with the 5K next year. I should have done it this year. I just,
Hold you to that.
please do. Yeah, I found out, I usually do the half marathon, and I found out that the 5K is actually like a hoot and a holler. So I didn't know that. I didn't understand why you'd pay money. It just didn't make sense to me. So people said it's a hoot and a holler, and I was like, oh, well, I'm down for that.
Well, I tell you, walking down Green Street in the dark, but with people who graduate, many of them graduated from the U of I and have not really seen Green Street. It was fun to hear Green Street, going down Green Street, and it was really exciting.
All right. Anyone else have commissioner communications? All right. And what about, it looks like we're moving on then to unfinished business, BPAC goals and initiatives. And this is, I think, was Bruce supposed to do that?
He put this together, but I added it to the agenda. Maybe there isn't much to talk about here, but I wanted to make sure you all saw what he put together because I didn't get a chance to do anything with this. So he organized what our current topics are, and our administrative supervisor, Michelle, she found that that last survey that was done by BPAC, we talked a little bit about that last month, was actually done in October of 2023. John Zeman put that together, and 6 of the members filled that out. So I guess one question I have for the group is, are we good with this list here? And would we want to do another survey to prioritize this list? Or perhaps just prioritize them within the categories. Or if there are other thoughts on how we want to move forward, open to discussion. I just wanted to get this shared with the group, and we can always continue the discussion when Bruce gets back, too. I guess we're all reading it, but do we want to just maybe focus on one section at a time after you've read through organizational initiatives? Is there anything else you'd want to add for now, or we're okay with the ones that are listed?
I think they're even in a good order. Like, the first one's going to be easy, like amend the bylaws. And then the second one is, I think, a priority for us to get more momentum, more focused momentum on different topics for specific initiatives and projects.
Yeah, so what I'm not seeing, and I'm not sure, maybe I'm just not reading it right, is the concept of establishing working groups and those.
Well, that's
We call them
the second one,
subcommittees.
establishing standing subcommittees
Yeah.
for specific.
Okay. I'm with you then. All right.
Would there be an interest in having a subcommittee or a working group focused on the second section, like all the advocacy efforts? That seems like something there could be a lot to do outside of these larger meetings.
Yeah, because one of my questions is how can this committee work more intelligently with the city of Urbana to effectively help move things forward? Instead of us just talking to ourselves or coming up with ideas, like, is there any thought on how we could work more closely with the city and their objectives? Ours, we're all the city, but.
Well, we do have 2 vacancies right now. We could solicit a council member to be a member. Just an idea.
We could all, like, if there was a thing, we could all sign it. Be more effective or not, if we're like, hey, council person, we think you're in tune with our priorities.
Yeah,
How
I mean,
about-
yeah, we've been without a council member since Bill Brown.
Right.
So it's been many years that we haven't had a voice at the council. The commission hasn't had a voice at the council, so. I've reached out to one council member. They are unavailable at this time, but I could try again.
And I think one of the good points about this committee is typically most everyone shows up. I mean, it's a pretty active committee, and I think they would enjoy being on it, truthfully.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a question about the second group of bullet points. It talks about signage, but I'm not really seeing any points that are specifically about signage. Is that supposed to be about like wayfinding, or is that geared towards the address to speed limits?
I think the focus is on, I think it's just advocacy for physical improvements in the infrastructure, whether that's a website or communication or adding signs on streets or enforcement. That's what I think it means.
Okay.
So.
Sorry, which bullet are we talking about?
We're just talking the second large, advocacy for specific improvements in local infrastructure, signage and enforcement.
Oh, sure.
I know at one point we were working on signage, and then there was supposed to be a signage plan, but that went away. So I'm not sure. I know you work with the park district, so I'm not sure if you have a strong opinion either way about like wayfinding on the streets that would get people to parks. Because that was like what we were working on was it'll be a 2-minute bike ride to the park. Or it'll be, in like different ways, or 2 minutes to the University of Illinois.
I've done some research on that, not in 2025, maybe 2023, 2024. We haven't really talked about it as of late, but that's something I think we want to move towards in the future. I think that'd be a great idea to have, you're close to this park, this is what's around here. So I think we are going to try to build towards that.
Yeah, Bruce, what Bruce's comment was last time was everybody uses digital phones now to get around. And I personally do like signs. Like, I like seeing things that are a visual reminder, like Crystal Lake Park, 2 minutes this way. And so things like that I like. I also think it's nice for people who are not familiar with the city to know that there are these other spaces and places they can go. So I feel like it encourages people to get out more. But yeah, I think that could be a good project.
Also, I don't see the safe rides for all the application. Is that like I misread that, or that's including some of the bullet points?
You mean the SS4A grant, Safe Routes for All? I have an update on that from the city later in my updates. I don't know if Bruce left that off intentionally. But.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing grants or like or the equity, the EQL grants. Those items, I'm not seeing that on here. But I think he was trying to go broad. Yeah. But like you're saying, I'm not seeing any discussion about money. I think is easy. Like, the SS4A is a related to safe routes to school. So I'm wondering if we all don't just like spend a little time with this and maybe we talk about it next month. Would that be good? Because it feels like there's a lot here, and I'm not quite sure how we want to break this down or how we want to move this forward. Does anyone have thoughts on that? Like, I mean, we can punt it till next month, but I'm like, what happens next month?
I can volunteer that if anyone comes up with additional things that are left off, aside from what we just talked about, that you could email me those in the next month, and I can add them. Yeah,
Add money.
Grants, help with grants, money, funding. Okay.
Even if it's like collaborating and getting other people to get the grants, but I think it should be in here.
Right, and when I send the reminder about the meeting, if folks are getting their emails, I'll send a reminder about this. So if anyone comes up with anything in the next, 3 weeks, then you can share them with me a week ahead of the meeting.
All right, and Carmen, for my part, I will think about how we can then move this forward. If we have a whole list of things, how we can intelligently address it and see what the best way is to break down all these different initiatives and what would be the best way to maybe create working groups. All right, moving along. Do we have reports of city officials and staff and reports of committees?
Yes, I have updates on a long list of projects here, so bear with me as I read off my list. Florida Avenue Shared Use Path. Update is the same as last month. The plans are at 90% complete. Project has cleared the SHPO review with no potential impacts, and the construction is still planned for 2026 to ensure coordination between the street and path designs. Baker's Lane Shared Use Path, we have the pre-final PS&E packet, and the city, the Park District, and IDOT are reviewing that now. The next steps are to secure the IGAs and easements with various agencies and property owners, and then move forward toward letting. The letting date will be coordinated with our consultant, and construction is still anticipated to begin in early fall of this year to be completed in 2026.
We have funding for both. We not only do we have approved funding, but we actually have the money for both two of those.
This year, yes, those are the ITEP grants through the state. So this is state funded, yes. Then the CDBG sidewalk improvements. This is complete. Well, I have to say substantially complete because we haven't done the final change orders yet, but the side is to be installed this week. So these are the CDBG funds that were spent on sidewalk repairs in the Beardsley Avenue area. This was completed in March. So that's being wrapped up right now. EQL streetlights, the FY22 funded streetlights, the construction is underway now to be completed by the middle of this year, so soon. So this includes the 71 pedestrian lights and 6 roadway lights. This week, they're currently installing pedestrian poles on Michigan Avenue. EQL FY25 program, this is the same update as last month. The council has approved the program. These are improvements that John talked about back in December at BPAC. So they're sidewalks, ramps, streetlights, and some traffic calming devices on Broadway, Kerr Avenue, and Cottage Grove. Lincoln Avenue corridor study, I will give an update in a little bit, but final public input phase is happening now and is open until May 30th. Lincoln Avenue washer to Killarney. The SS4A grant funding for that demonstration project is under review right now by USDOT. The concept designs and public outreach planning is moving forward, though it's underway now. And we still expect to bid the project for construction in FY28. I'm gonna keep going unless anyone stops me. Okay, traffic signal improvements. This one hasn't changed since last month. Planning to upgrade outdated audio devices for the PED signals on up to 14 signalized intersections. Champaign is doing something similar right now.
Did they come up with a uniform way of doing that, like sounds, or are they going with voices, or?
We have to follow what is MUTCD policy on that, so it just depends on the type of intersection that it is, whether it's a voice or the beeping. That's all I know.
And when is that expected to be done?
I don't know right now, but I can look that up while we're talking about something else, and I'll get back to you on that one. I think in the upcoming fiscal year, I believe. So within the next 6 months, I believe. But again, I'll check on that. Sidewalk improvements from FY25 funding. We're getting contractor under contract right now. This is approximately 700 feet of sidewalk replacements in West Urbana in various locations. These were just really high priority broken sidewalks with large faults. We just got our bids in last week, but with the funding that we have available, we may be able to add more locations to that contract. And the draft CIP for upcoming fiscal year is available online now. The public comment period ended earlier in May, but if you have additional comments, you can email Public Works Engineering staff at any time. Oh, more updates on grants. So those are the projects. Now grants. Okay, so IDOT, there's a number of different grants here that we're going to pursue and consider. So there's a local projects grant that came out just last week. Yeah, right, that was, yeah, it just happened. So that application is very simple. It appears to be very simple, just a Microsoft form, and it's for any local projects. Basically, we have a number of projects that would qualify for that, so we're thinking of applying for at least 3, maybe more, like our big projects, like the 2 Lincoln Avenue projects, Florida Avenue, since the federal funding is in question right now, and that's due June 1st. And there's a webinar on Thursday of this week, so be tuning into that and learning more.
Thank you,
And-
Carmen, for doing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't want to miss out on that opportunity. It's $400 million that the state is set aside for around 200 projects.
So this is like last minute. Carmen didn't know that this was going to be an exciting new project for her to explore.
Well, no one knew about
Well,
this.
I know no one knew, but I know.
So
but
not just me. This was
I'm just trying to be clear that like it's that's why I was thanking you, because like sometimes in the past we've been like, could we look into this? And everyone's like, no, I'm underwater. And we're like, okay.
Oh no, we have to. I think this is an opportunity we don't want to miss out on, since the state is potentially putting this out to help fill that gap of federal funding that we're losing potentially. IDOT, the HSIP, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, I believe is what those letters stand for. That one is due June 20th. I believe we're going to apply for North Lincoln Avenue project for that one with the help of our RPC. But first, focused on the local projects grant. Safe Routes to School, another IDOT grant you probably all are familiar with. That one opens up in August of this year. We're going to be working with RPC possibly to apply for something there as well. Maybe some updated Safe Routes to School plans.
Oh, that would be great. And that is administered through MTD. Is that who runs the money, or who runs the money on that?
Yes, but I do not manage this project directly, but MTD is the one who runs the stuff and keep all the materials and send staff, provide the staff labor to like talk to students and talk to all the Urbana PD, yes.
I think these might be 2 different grants, though. I'm not sure. So I'm talking about the Safe Routes to School plans that RPC put together over the last couple years. Was MTD leading?
Yeah, I
that?
think we're talking. Yeah, we were talking about like the actual like
The events.
or the bike to school day and all that. We were programs. You're talking about actual infrastructure.
Well, no, there's infrastructure grants and there's non-infrastructure, and I'm not sure if we'll go after any of the infrastructure grants for Safe Routes to School. But for non-infrastructure, just talk briefly with Gabe at RPC about updating, and Rita, about updating the Safe Routes to School plans. Specifically, Wiley, the new 6th grade center that they're working on right now, has been working on a traffic plan. And we're thinking we would like a consistent traffic plan for all of the schools in the city. And so that could just be an update to the existing Safe Routes to School plans that RPC has already started for a couple schools. I don't think they did it for all of the elementary schools, but there's a few available online, like.
And is traffic plan like drop off? Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Because I know I really would like a crosswalk in front of the school over here, in front of, on Ray Street, in front of the
Middle school.
Urbana Middle School, yeah. I'd really like a stop sign, crosswalk. And also, I know one of the reasons it exists the way it exists is because of drop-off. So that would be amazing if we could find a way to get that all to work together. That'd be great.
So I went to a webinar a few weeks ago now, or not webinar, sorry, it was an actual in-person training in Tuscola with IDOT, a conference, the SPAC conference, where they talked about Safe Routes to School and ITEP and Economic Development Program. And my thought is if we can have these updated safe routes to school plans, they will help us go after the infrastructure grants to do more of these crosswalks or signage or traffic calming near the schools in the future, or even just fixing the sidewalks in the vicinity of the schools as long as they're on clear routes that students are actually walking on. So,
I think before Cynthia retired, she was the one who handles this project and all the grants. Now she retired. I'm not too sure. Maybe that's why RPC is applying for the grants.
I'm not sure the history. These are new to me. I'm learning a lot in the last month. But yes, I know that she was involved in the past, and I think Gabe Lewis was as well.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. I think
Working-
both of them are like on the board of the Safe Rides to School. Yeah.
okay.
I don't know enough to say.
I'll keep learning and report back as I know more, but we have until August. It doesn't open until August. So I'm hoping we'll continue the conversations and get something squared away. All right. And then ITEP, that doesn't open until August of next year. So we have plenty of time to consider, what projects that might qualify, or parts of projects that would qualify for that. And then finally, SS4A. Sorry, I shouldn't end on a bad note here. I should have started with this one and ended with the local projects, but we did a go-no-go process with our grant consultant for this one. I tuned into a webinar through the local infrastructure hub on the SS4A grant. Our consultant tuned into USDOT webinar on this. And, we've looked at all the information that's being provided by the federal government, and we just don't think that we should be pursuing any SS4A grants at this time based on what their priorities are. Happy to share my brief table. I summarized all of these things with all of you, but really some of the highlights here is that USDOT is looking for rural projects, and we're definitely not in that category. They're looking at areas with high birth and marriage rates. They do not view lane reductions favorably, and that's what several of our projects are. And bike lanes are not viewed favorably anymore.
Regarding the bike lanes, do they talk about side paths at all, just out of curiosity? Is there any mention of sidewalks or shared use paths, or, okay.
I haven't seen that. I'm basing their view on bike lanes from what I saw in the updated RAISE grant, which is now
Right.
Build.
I remember
where
that.
they crossed off bike lanes throughout the NOFO.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
But I haven't seen anything about side paths or shared use paths.
Yeah. And so for the birth rates, seriously, I'm just asking this question. Like, for the birth rates, is it by city, or could we fix the street in front of Carl?
I don't think we can get that hyper focused, but I like the creativity. That's great. Yeah. Oh, and
Champaign County does have we're growing. Yeah, Carl Fields, no, they're not, that's expensive infrastructure. That's going to have some situations in the future that none of us will have to pay for, because we live in Urbana. But yeah, I remember reading about the birth rates, but yeah, the part that stopped me was that it's about, you can't take out a car lane to replace it with a bike lane, and that bike lanes aren't funded. But then I was curious if sidewalks or side paths, if there's a workaround in there, that's really what I was hunting for.
I'm not sure. We tried to take a very subjective. Yeah, exactly. I took the most subjective approach we could, and we have our list of things to look for in a go, no-go process. Our consultant helped us put that together. And with the score that we came up with, we were right on the border of we should go for it, or we should have further discussions. We had those further discussions that led us to.
Just trying to think if there's any roads, you know how it is. You're just trying to think of any roads that fit that description. That's my other thought. Could we? No, there are none.
Yeah, but there are a number of IDOT grants that we will pursue. So, okay, with that, I'm done with updates.
Unfortunately for you, we're now going to move into new business. And new business, the first one is Lincoln Avenue Corridor Study Updates.
I will be brief. So these are RPC slides, which I have permission to use, but I'm going to just show a few of them. We're not going to go through all of them. Let's see. I think you all have a good understanding of Lincoln Avenue corridor study, so I will just jump to what our initial interventions or the improvements that we proposed initially. So we had on-street bike lanes for the full length of the corridor that would be vertically separated from the roadway, similar to Green Street. So we didn't have the space horizontally to get that, to get it to be a protected bike lane with horizontal distance, but it can be considered a protected bike lane with that vertical change. Then we're going to create right turn only
So wait,
lanes.
would it look like that image there?
That's Green Street
I
there. So
know.
yeah, it would be similar to what is on Green Street.
Okay, that feels very safe when I bike on that. Okay.
Good. Okay. Then creation of right turn only lanes at the corridor entrances. So that's the north end and the south end of this corridor. That's at Green Street and Florida Avenue. So then the entire corridor would become a 3-lane section. So going from the 4 lanes down to 3, making it all consistent like it is already between Nevada and Florida. Initially, we proposed full access closures on 3 of the intersections on the east side of Lincoln at Oregon, Iowa, and Indiana, but maintaining the bike and pedestrian access. Then we also proposed converting Nevada and Vermont to right in and right out only. And then crosswalk location changes, a new crosswalk proposed at Oregon, and the Ohio and Indiana crosswalks would be consolidated into a mid-block crossing. All of the crosswalks that are located outside of the signalized intersections would have the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, so that's the push button indicator. So it flashes just like on Springfield Avenue where you're crossing by the engineering campus. So there's 4. Then at Oregon, Iowa, the mid-block between Ohio and Indiana, and then just north of Michigan.
And
then
they
we'd
would
make-
have, they'd have
yeah.
those stop bars where people know where to stop. They won't stop on the crosswalk. They'll actually stop to have room.
I believe so, but I'll have to pull up the,
Yeah.
yeah, that image shows them. We'll have to pull up the image.
And I know
from the
guidelines have been
full-
updated now that you have to include them, so that's good.
I think so, but when we get later in the slides, I'll see if it's shown on the plan. Yeah, so they're shown here. You can see it, the hatched line stop bars. Okay, then we proposed making some slight changes to the bus stops. So the bus stops between Iowa and Ohio slightly relocated to avoid conflict with the proposed pedestrian crossing. So southbound stop at LAR, we're proposing shifting west into campus, and we've been working with U of I on that. So this is pending an agreement with them. We would have the bike lane and the sidewalk go around the bus stop there. And then the northbound.
Would that be like similar infrastructures like what's by the Illini Union?
Yes, exactly.
That's very good infrastructure.
Is this picture like up north? Or I kind of figure out the directions.
Oh, on the right side is north, left side
Right
is south.
north. Okay. Yep.
And this is LAR at the top.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the northbound stop shifted to where Iowa intersection is closed, and this you'll see has been changed with the updates for this year. And then also the Oregon northbound stop shifted north to the closed Oregon Avenue. Again, that one has changed based on our updates. Okay, so I don't need to go through all of this, but I can summarize that the public comment period we had ending in early 2025 resulted in a lot of comments on opposition to the full access closures. And, okay, so here's a summary of the outreach. We saw opposition of the road closures. That was the primary point that needed to be addressed. So that came from the residents of the neighborhood primarily, but also the fire department had some issues with that. We had some concerns about movement of the garbage trucks in those spaces, and our consultant confirmed that we could navigate those through the closures, but we wouldn't be able to navigate a full turn for a fire truck. They would only be able to reverse out of the street. So in light of all of that feedback that we got, we decided at Public Works that we were not going to support the full closures of Oregon, Iowa, and now I'm blanking, the third. So Oregon, Iowa, Indiana, yeah. So instead, we have transitioned these to a write-in or a write-out only at Oregon, as shown on the top image. And we are also, and then in Iowa, so it's write-out only for that one as well. And because that is where the bike route goes, we've now shown this additional crossing for the bikes and made it more, made a better transition from campus to Iowa. You can see where that crossing for the bike path there. And then a transition onto Iowa Street where you can make that crossing, which would ideally keep the bikes from going directly down the wrong way on Iowa Street.
Can't you make that contraflow? Oh, wait. Oh, we'll get into detail in a sec. All right.
And then Indiana, we've changed to eastbound only. So this is in only. It can be both right in or left in, but it's in only. And then we decided to go with a one-way here because it is already a pretty narrow street. So having two directions and the parking lane, it isn't the space for that now. And with the conflict, a potential conflict with the pedestrian crossing that is north of Indiana, that's just off this page, you can't see it in this image. We're trying to protect the pedestrians there as much as we can. Or I'm sorry, it was just south. I'll need to show the larger image. But basically the intent is we are still trying to reduce the number of interactions between pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles. And without a full access closure, we think this is like the next best thing is we're allowing in here too because we wanted to allow another access point into the neighborhood, whereas these other two, you can only go out from the neighborhood onto Lincoln, but there isn't an in point.
And
Yeah.
what were the traffic count? Wasn't like 100 cars, like Oregon, Iowa, and Indiana total per day? Or do you remember? Do you have any memory of that?
Or I'd have to,
Yeah.
it's all online on
Yeah.
the website, so I'd have to pull that up, but we
Yeah.
have a nice graphic that shows all of those numbers.
Yeah. So then when bikes come off, like that was my next question. So when bikes come off on Iowa, they'll just go right on they're on the pink, the bikes are on the pink part?
Yes,
So they would just go off Iowa on probably what's a wide sidewalk or side path, and then they would then join the rest of Iowa Street at that point.
right.
And then if you come off Oregon, it's the same situation. You're just going to hop right off. Because that would be Oregon, there'll be contraflow for bikes, right? You'll be able to go both ways on Oregon, Iowa, and Indiana if you're on a bike. Correct?
That's a great question. I'm not sure we would be supportive of bikes going in the, opposing the traffic on Indiana, but
Okay.
that is something we'll need to,
Good luck stopping
Discuss.
them, but yeah.
yeah,
Might want to just design for how people will use the
that's true.
street.
So our city planner did bring that point up to me of having another path. So I have shared that with the team. We haven't discussed that yet, but having a
Yeah.
path from Indiana flowing onto the bike path. So yeah, this is a concept. I will remind all of you that it's a study and it's a concept, so it can still change in design. But let me continue with the recommendation. So the bus stops, had to change for some of these changes. This is Oregon Street, the northbound stop is shifting to the north of the partially opened Oregon intersection. So to prevent the conflict between the turning traffic and the buses sitting there, we'll have to shift slightly north. But we also want to get the buses off of the crosswalk as well, but keep the far side stop, if I'm saying that right. When the crosswalk is behind the bus is what we want. And then same thing for Iowa. We're shifting the northbound stop slightly north, and this will require an easement with this property. So this is dependent upon right-of-way negotiations with that property owner, of course. So this is just showing the full view. It doesn't, the more detailed concept plan is also online. You can go here.
And again, the reason we wanted the streets, the reasons that we were hoping maybe that it was proposed, let's just put it that way, that we were proposed to have those streets blocked was, I believe I remember reading, was a 25% reduction in crash rates. And it also allowed for more flow of traffic and less stop and go traffic. That was my understanding.
The reason for the access closures? It's primarily to prevent the interactions between the different modes of traffic. So there's a really great graphic that our consultant put together, but we haven't shared publicly yet, that shows, just as you reduce number of access points, getting rid of those interactions. And so I think that could be something that we share with the public too, to really highlight the potential safety improvements that you could see.
I was on Lincoln Avenue yesterday, and I noticed there's 3 cars permanently parked in front of Jimmy John's. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to also have to be really aware of how if the bike lanes aren't separated, which I think they are, which is what it's very exciting. I don't think we're going to have a lot of cars parking in those bike lanes. So that's going to be the one thing to just sort of be aware of. I just noticed that the other day. I was like, whoa, there's 3 cars just parked here all the time.
Right. So this brings me to some of our ongoing things I just jotted down here to share with you. The second point is the loading zone removal and transfer from along the corridor to outside of the corridor. So that's something that we'll continue working on through design. We'll also keep considering how the recycling and trash trucks will navigate the streets with the access changes. And, I think we need to make sure that we highlight to the public the crash data and why this is so important that we make these changes. I really just listed 2 primary reasons here. That Ohio Street intersection was listed in the top 5% of priority safety locations by IDOT within the district in 2017. So that was based on the 5 years previous to that, the crash record it had there. And then most of this stretch of corridor is shown as a high injury network locations. There's 2 segments of it, and the middle segment isn't considered within this, but for the vulnerable road users, safety assessment. And I think that's pretty key here. When people think that there isn't an issue, we can point to this and say that it clearly is.
Yeah, and I read a lot of comments from neighbors saying this is a totally safe street. There is no problem on this street. I don't see accidents, and they. Well, yeah, and I mean, I've been aware of this street problem. We had someone come here and show us his dash cam of almost killing 3 people at once because there was a car parked in the middle of the road and there were 3 people, turning left, and there were 3 people in front of that car, and he was thankfully driving 25 miles an hour, but he literally stopped before killing all 3. It was his daughter who said, "You need to stop." And so he stopped the car. But he showed us the dash cam video and said, "You have got to change the infrastructure of this street." And here we are.
Yeah, so I think emphasizing the need is really important, and we'll continue to do that and highlight the purpose and the benefits of these changes, specifically the access changes. And we'll continue to consider pedestrian refuge medians where they're feasible. We can't block access to driveways, and we still need to make sure our emergency vehicles, the fire trucks, can navigate the corridor as they need to. But we'll also take into consideration any roadway, any curb radii changes that we could make that could, potentially shorten that distance that pedestrians would have to cross the intersections. So I'm sure there's more here that I didn't think of, but I just wanted to highlight something.
Can we talk about funding for just 1 second on this? Because the other issue with the Lincoln Avenue corridor study is this is just a study, right? That's one thing I just keep trying to emphasize to folks. It's just a study. And then after the study, we move into, can you give me we go into a plan phase, correct? Mm-hmm. And then after the plan phase, that's when we can start, once we have a plan, we can then start applying for grants.
We can apply for grants at any time. I did apply for the EPA Community Change Grant for this project back in the fall, but I don't think that exists anymore. I think once council approves the recommendations of this study, then that's a great place to consider applying for more. At least that's been the philosophy of RPC, is that having that approval from council would, really add to the grant applications. I do plan to submit this for the local project grant because they are accepting of any phase of the project. So that could help fund the design and construction potentially.
Yeah, because my biggest concern is if we are waiting for, I don't want to say waiting, but if we need federal grants to do this, we're not going to have a shovel in the ground for 8 years. I mean, realistically, even if we did get new federal funding starting in 4 years, we still have to apply, we still have to get it approved, so it would be about 8 years. And that's a long time. If you look at that street is falling apart. It's a mess. So.
Yeah. And I think the grants atmosphere is changing and evolving all the time. So we're going to keep an eye on the state grants and any federal grants that we think we would be a good fit for. I mentioned earlier, we're in the final public input phase now. If you have input, please share with JD at RPC, or you can pass it along to me. Or if BPAC wanted to, support this as a group, just throw that out there. That's a potential thing too, to say to council, hey, BPAC is supportive of this and you should be too. But
One question I have about public feedback often is that I'll submit public feedback and then a lot of people kind of hop on public feedback at the end. And do you ever sort out public feedback by 7 people gave us the same feedback or 4 people submitted? Do you ever look at the demographics of the entire city of who's submitting feedback, or does that question make sense to you? Because this is a corridor that's used by everybody.
Right, so RPC did break out, so they had the full grouping of public comments from the last period, and then they took out all those that were just from WUNA alone, just to compare, and they saw similar feedback from both. So other than that, it wasn't pulling out any other geographic area. But they have looked throughout all the phases, looked at how people are using the corridor and what type of feedback they gave. So they asked, are you biking, are you walking, are you driving, and how often are you doing those things? So I feel like RPC has a very comprehensive process, at least for this project, on getting that data.
Thank you. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Does the whole study, it starts at Green Street, or I guess starts and stops at Green Street, and then does it go all the way towards, where does it stop?
Florida.
Florida? Okay.
I'll also note that the plan right now is to bring this back to council in early July to try to get their approval of these recommendations. So with the comment period ending next week, we'll take the next month to go through the last round of public input and, prepare for that presentation with council. So that's,
It would make sense if we gave our endorsement before then, right?
that's where I was headed. Yep.
I'm inclined to endorse it. We have a quorum.
Does anybody,
So would we want to see what you come up with in the next few weeks and then vote on something in the June meeting? Would that,
We don't anticipate making any further changes in the coming weeks based on the feedback we've seen so far.
okay?
May just be additional information, or the way we are delivering the message may change a bit, but I think this concept plan is what we will be bringing to council.
and, I mean, the bottom line is there will be full bike lanes, the entire stretch of it, and those bike lanes will be separated. They will not be on street. That alone is a massive safety improvement, in addition to having the crosswalks with the flashing beacons, with the stop bars. That is yet another massive improvement. Obviously, blocking those, blocking those 3 streets, I understand that's a huge ask from the folks that live in those neighborhoods and around there, but I appreciate them being open to the possibility of a 50% closure and just seeing what that 50% closure looks like and how that operates. And if after the 50% closure, they realize it's not that big of a deal, my next question would be, is there, because essentially anytime you have an additional, what you'd call a cutaway, right? So that's a cutaway. The parking lot by Jimmy John's, that's a cutaway. That is going to be a pinch point. That's an area where people will get into a possible accident, which is why, there was the proposal to get rid of them. But my question is if let's pretend that this gets installed in 5 years, and then 5 years later, folks are like, hey, maybe we'd like to revisit this. I do think because it was proposed as an initial idea, we might be able to come back to it. I don't know if maybe I've moved on to other projects at that point, but that would be my question and thought. Not that that would have anything to do with us approving this and sending it forward to council, but.
Are you asking if we could change it back after 5 years?
Not change it back, but if you'd be able to do 100% closure, if people were open to it. If people are like, wow, this is so great that cars are not going down my street anymore. I am so excited about this. Because I know I talked to some people and they didn't want to publicly put on Wuna that, boy, I would love to have my street closed. But they, that's my only question, is if after people are like, wow, this is great, a 50% reduction in traffic, and but I don't know if it's possible to change the street infrastructure at that point. I guess large rocks, but I also think it's really good to figure out if we can get trucks up and down those streets and how and the movement there. So we're asking for a pretty big change anyway. So this might be enough of a change for right now to move it forward. Would be my thought process. Do we agree? Do we want to send this forward? Yeah? All right.
Sure.
We got one sure vote. Do we have a second sure vote?
I move to approve this.
All right, that's,
And I'll second.
all right. You officially have the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commissions.
Well, all in favor?
All in favor, wait, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. All right, and when I present mine, I'll show you something that might add to when you're discussing this. So next up, I'm going to present about the Illinois Bike Walk Summit Lobby Days, and then after that, I'll present the Kuwat's Transportation Safety Advisory Meeting. And so I won't go into super detail on either one. I think I need this.
I'll give you dirty notes.
Yeah, please, yeah, just enough.
Sorry if I took up too much of your time with mine. I tried to be brief.
I am one. Do you need us to send a letter of support or just voicing our approval? Is that good enough?
I'm not sure how all this works, so I'm going to turn it to the larger
I would
group.
imagine if you could tell them, you inform them that we had voted on and approved it, that would be, that they wouldn't need
A letter.
anything more formal than that.
Okay.
Okay. I attended the Illinois Bike and Walk Summit in Springfield. There were a lot of folks from the city of Champaign, the Champaign County Forest Preserve, and folks from all over the state come to this. And it was held in Springfield this year, so that allowed for the opportunity of one day of summit workshops, and then the second day allowed for a lobby day. So the first thing, and so there are two very different activities, and it was the first time Ride Illinois has hired a lobbyist, which is very exciting. And so it's the first time that they were able to organize lobby days, and I will get into more what that is and how that affects us. But what I first just want to give just a quick summary of the event. So what Ride Illinois is interested in is greatly reducing and ultimately eliminating bicycle fatalities in Illinois. They want to make Illinois the top 5 bicycle-friendly state. And they want to make Illinois better with and through biking. So that is what Bike Illinois is about. The summit opened with the mayor of Springfield giving a great presentation on my monitors went black. Giving a great presentation on updates in Springfield and different work that they're doing to help build infrastructure for biking and walking in Springfield. And it's a little bit of a brutal, right now there's not a lot of great infrastructure there for this, but she's doing some great work, and it's going to be pretty exciting. At some point, we're going to be able to bike in our state capital and get around. So I'm pretty excited about that. I attended, when I attended a few things that I attended was this is more just a dork out moment, is the updates to the AASHTO guide. So the AASHTO guide, believe it or not, is becoming a lot more like the NACTO guide. And again, I know this might sound like a foreign language to a lot of us, but I really highly recommend, if we're looking at the pedestrian signals, the new AASHTO guide is very much like the NACTO guide. So it's really good news. And they really worked on making it as visual as possible. So a lot of people will be able to access it and understand it. And so I'm very excited about that. So there are other there were quite a few other activities. The other one that I attended that I thought was really wonderful talked about the Chicago cycling strategy versus creating a bicycle plan, which I thought was really wonderful, because when I lived in Chicago, they would put in, like, say, protected bike lanes, which was what we thought the greatest thing ever. And then the aldermen would come in and say, my people don't want this, and they would have to literally take out cement protected bike lanes, which was just heartbreaking. But what they were doing is they went with the just build it approach versus building trust approach. So they're now in Chicago working through what they're calling strategies. So instead of saying we have a 10-year bike plan, they're saying we have strategies. And when they come into a community, they start first with interest and introduction. And so they kind of work with the bike advocates that are in those neighborhoods, and they say, how can we talk to people? So that would be the growing interest group. After that, they begin to socialize and saturate. And so they then begin with like an emerging network. And then after that, they work with enthusiasm and strengthen, and that's more of an established network. And so what they're doing is when they come into neighborhoods, they try to decide, is this neighborhood have a growing interest in bike and walk infrastructure? Do they have emerging network infrastructure interest? Or is it established? And if it's established, then we just go right to, stage 3. But then you always repeat the whole process over and over again. So you're never leaving people out. And they're also, the city of Chicago is very interested as cycling is critical to becoming the city we aspire to be. We're going to move further and faster together. And cycling is about relationships, and it's a quality of life issue. And they also really emphasize the idea of different approaches in different neighborhoods. So not a one size fit all. So what they do is they come in, and for about a year, they do a lot of this talking, getting people together, meeting people, and then they come up with a bike plan and they install it. And then they move on to the next neighborhood. So it's very exciting for me, who was in Chicago in the 90s, where there were no bike lanes, there was no bike infrastructure. I was not wearing a helmet. I did not have lights on my bike. I was everything you've heard about, yet I'm still alive. But now to see this upgrade, and it's also very exciting. IDOT was there. They gave an opening statement at the beginning, and they said, we are very interested in bike and walk infrastructure. We're very interested in getting this into all of our communities. So it's pretty exciting for someone like me who's been watching this on the back end for years and advocating for this, to start seeing actual forward momentum for it. So they're interested in transforming neighborhoods through through bike networks. They also do bike giveaways. So that to me was sort of I found that to be one of the most inspiring and interesting. And again, they moved away from, if you build it, they will come. They said, let's not go with that. Let's really work on building. Let's work on building community input. And so that was very helpful. Then this goes into, so there were a lot of other things that I attended, but those were, to me, the most interesting. Then the following day, gosh, I don't know how many of us there were. We I want to say between 40 and 60 of us went to the state capitol, and we were divided into groups, and we had reached out in previous days to our representatives or to other representatives in our group. And so it would go from the, we didn't care if they were Republican or Democrat. We wanted to talk to them. And so what we wanted to talk to them about is Bike Illinois had three bills that they wanted to get passed. And so the first one was called Definition of a Bicycle, so SB 2285. And we had found out that there was quite a bit of support for it, but we still wanted to go and talk to them about it. And so Definition of a Bicycle would legalize the use of trikes and similar vehicles. So for example, Senator Duckworth, she uses a trike. And so her bike previously was not legal on our streets to use. But hopefully this will get passed, and she'll be able to use her trike, so legally. So that is very exciting, and we were impressed by the fact that that one looked like it was going to sail through, and I meant to check if all of them sailed through, but I did not. The next one was SB 1559, IDOT traffic study after pedestrian fatality. This would require IDOT to conduct traffic studies for fatal crashes involving pedestrians at intersections of state highways, result in recommendation infrastructure improvements and traffic control devices, require IDOT to identify trends and patterns related to fatal crashes, increase safety for pedestrians and bicyclists on state highways in Illinois. And one of the people we were lobbying with was in the military, and he was just like, I was just so surprised when I found out that we weren't actually already doing this. Because if you're in the military, you're constantly trying to make things safer and better for everybody involved. And they also do this in the airline industry. It's just common sense. So hopefully we're beginning to move towards when there's a crash, we study it, we find out why, and we try to make it safer. And the question we'd say is, how can we do better if we don't study the glitches in our system? And one of the things is intersections have the highest crash rate of any part of your street. So the final one was and this one I think we're going to bring back next year, which is SB 2111, bicycle safety stops. So if any of you ride a bike, you will know that this is often called the Idaho stop. And so what it is you're using a stop sign as a yield sign. Instead of coming to a complete stop, putting your foot down, counting to 5 seconds, and then going forward, you approach the stop sign, you use it as a yield, you look, and then you go. So this would update the rules of the road to support the safety of bicycles, and it has been proven that the Idaho stop, what I just short-term call it the Idaho stop or bicycle safety stops, does reduce injury for cyclists because the cyclists are able to get through that intersection faster and safer. But it does support the safety and a proven way to reduce crashes, allow bicyclists to treat a stop sign as a yield sign after assessing the traffic hazards and when it is safe to proceed. Still require bicyclists to yield right away to pedestrians and other roadway users who arrive at the stop sign first. Not allow for or sanction blowing through an intersection, which would remain unsafe and illegal. And what we talked a lot about in this was bicyclists take on a lot of self-risk assessment when you're riding. And 9 states have already passed a law like this. They've researched it, they've passed it, they have adopted it, and it has lowered traffic accidents. So that is so those were the three things that we talked to. I think we had 8 people that we talked with, and I highly recommend if you get the chance to do a lobby day. It's very lovely to see democracy. And our state capitol is absolutely gorgeous. So that is my update. Does anyone have questions or thoughts? They change where Bike Illinois happens every year. So it was in Champaign, I believe, 2 years ago. So we move it around the state. And I just highly recommend it. It's always encouraging to go there, and you get to meet a lot of people. And so yeah, there's that. So does anyone have questions about those bills? Thoughts?
The Idaho stop is safer than fully stopping.
Yep.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, the other thing we always tell people too is, like, if you're in a car, do you ever, if you don't have to, do you ever come to a complete stop?
No.
Yeah.
But it's also, like, if I'm commuting, if I stop, even though I'm ahead in front of the car, then they think I'm yielding to them.
Wait, explain that to me, Sue. What do you?
So, like, okay, I'm approaching the 4-way, and I'm ahead. I'm going to get there before the car that's coming there.
Mm-hmm.
But if I come to a complete stop, then they perceive that I'm yielding to them.
Yeah, well, that was what we talked a lot about, was how cyclists are constantly, we're all like, because it's the Midwest, we're all like, no, you go. Like, it just kind of slows everyone down. But yeah, it is much safer. But it is a hard sell because people.
We should stop. it's safer.
Yeah, I understand. Like, I absolutely understand. Like, it makes perfect sense, but it's also hard for one of the folks we were with. She has a hard time with her knees. And so she said, it's hard for me to go to completely stop my bike, look, and then get up and then push again. So it's just it's much faster. Other people would talk about biking in Springfield and what that was like, because there's a whole series of stop signs. And it's pretty much, you're legalizing it pretty much when there's not a car around, is sort of what you're looking for. Like, you don't want to, yeah. So I don't know.
Car, you would fully stop then, right?
Yeah, you definitely should stop.
Okay.
Yep.
Because that would be confusing as a driver.
Exactly. Because then you're like, who's supposed to go where and when? And yeah, what's supposed to happen? You're like, do you always let the cyclist go first? Do you? Right, exactly. No, if everyone approaches the intersection at the same time, everyone needs to treat it the same way. But it's pretty much legalizing it for if there's no one around. I know that sounds dumb, but it's not, because you also, one of the reasons some people don't want to ride bikes is because they're worried they're going to get pulled over by the police for not wearing a helmet, which you can't get pulled over. Well, in Illinois, you cannot get pulled over for, or other reasons. So we're just trying to eliminate some barriers, what people might.
Does that also apply to cyclists? Like, when you are at this intersection with no people, you can just look and then just go without a fully stop?
If there's pedestrians, the pedestrians always get the right of way no matter what. Yeah. Right.
But also, I mean, I do a lot of proactive signaling, like I am yielding to you, so then I don't actually have to go to a full stop, because then they go and then I can go without having had to put my foot down.
Yeah. It's kind of how we all currently drive our cars. But I think it's just frustrating for people to see cyclists do it. That's kind of what I've decided. But yeah, because cyclists pretty much slow, go. Like, you slow, check, go. That's kind of how I approach stop signs. I have a dumb question. Does anyone know how to make this be view full screen? Or does it not matter to any of us?
It doesn't really matter, but I think if you find a way to get to slideshow instead of...
What have you got, Carmen?
Page display is the third option down on the thing oh, no, go down. You had it. Window?
Oh, no window?
Yeah. No, that wasn't it. View, yeah, view.
Whoa.
Oh, there you
I don't
go.
know. I don't know what I did, but let's just go with it. Okay, so, so we can come back to the Idaho Stop. Thank you all for your discussions and questions, because these are the type of things that when you do lobby days, people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's very helpful to have this feedback and to think about what it means. And I think we're going to have to probably get more hard data. We wanted
Or
this,
videos.
Videos, yeah. We also just kind of wanted to start socializing it with people and just saying, like, here's just an idea. So we did. So I am on the Champaign County Transportation Safety Advisory Group. There are folks from the city of Urbana, the city of Champaign, Savoy, Rantoul, Tono. There's a whole crew of us. And the first meeting that we had, there's a 56-page PDF here that I am going to breeze us through in a Carmen-esque way. But as we can see, there we go. Carmen, did we get the 40,000? I don't think so. It's funded by, let's move on.
Oh, are you talking about the 200,000?
Well, this
there?
one here says City of Urbana got 40,000. Safe Streets for All, that they had over $1 million.
So I don't know if that's referring to the piece that RPC is doing.
Yeah, I
with
think so.
Lincoln
Yep.
Avenue.
Yep.
That could be their piece, because that agreement was finalized with HWA before the demonstration project piece. So that's why we're still
Okay.
waiting on that review.
Okay. Well, I'm on the slide in case anyone asks. So, Safe Streets for All safety planning study areas. This is going to be the project timeline. But what I really want to get into is the crash data overview. So this is very, I think, kind of interesting. So they are looking at from 2014 to 2023 IDOT crash data. So we had over 26,000 crashes. And there were, we had about 26,000 crashes. We had 82 in the metropolitan planning area that were fatal and 74 in the rural area. So for a total, we had a total of 32,000, almost 33,000 crashes, 156 in the last 10 years that had fatalities. And this is, again, the area that was studied. So there's Mahomet, there's Bonneville, Savoy, Tolano, Champaign, and Urbana and Philo. So they kind of went into about how there were higher and lower crashes between 2014, 2023. We're worried that we do think that the crash data is going to be much higher this year than previous years. So that's just something to be aware of. And the one thing that I want to point out here is this is the University District. The University District comes right up against the Lincoln Avenue corridor study. The University District is our most complex area for cars. In the University District, you have cars, you have bikes, you have buses, you have your highest amount of density, so you have lots of pedestrians. You have scooters now. We have all sorts of vehicles trying to use that space, and people. And again, it's the most dense space. The University District used to actually have a high fatality rate and a high traffic rate. They started implementing safe systems throughout the University District, and we have now gone down to 0 in that space. So that is why the Lincoln Avenue corridor study and improvement is very important to help start expanding that whole safe systems approach. There's a variety of ways that the University District became a safe system, and that is through lowering speed limits, through pedestrian bump outs, through LPI, through the flashing beacon lights, through having bike lanes in separated spaces, having, when pedestrian crosswalk spaces, having it be visible that pedestrians are crossing. And that's a variety of tactics that are going to be implemented in the Lincoln Avenue. So hopefully we can keep kind of expanding these ideas throughout other areas. The other thing that I thought was pretty interesting, this is sort of bad, 958 in 2023 total injuries. So we've gone up quite a bit, and we've just gone up quite a bit. And then they kind of break it down in the type of injuries. We had a long discussion about how a lot of injuries aren't reported. We had a lot of talk about how what's going on with the drivers. And as you can tell from this discussion, it is drivers. It is not cyclists. It is not pedestrians. It's drivers of vehicles that are injuring people. So they are the unsafe object on the road, and people outside of the vehicles are who we need to start maybe putting more attention to. And so the age distribution of drivers and fatal crashes, one thing that she talked about with here was she goes, well, we have a much younger population in the the metropolitan planning area. And I was like, yeah, I guess, but I kind of wonder, so this is what it is. So this is the age breakdown of distribution of drivers in fatal crashes. And she just said we have a large population of people between the age of 20 and 29, and 34. But we do actually have a large population of people who are 60 and older too. So it's like, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing this graph a little different. And then these are the severe crashes. Again, you see a high rate of 20 to 24. Could be that they're new drivers. And so they're still trying to learn how to be a better driver. And anyone who's ridden a bicycle knows you're a much better cyclist the more you ride a bike. The other thing I want to show is, pedestrians and crashes by age and gender are female is green, male is blue. So again, it's our 20 to 24-year-olds who are in crashes at a higher rate than any other group, and there's probably a lot of reasons for that. A lot of them probably aren't driving. And again, there's the University Inset. We wanted to point out again that was 0, but you can see the fatal crashes. I mean, you can't really see on this what it is, but the red dot are fatal crashes. And then the tiny dots are injury crashes. So we are still having injuries, but we have eliminated fatalities and severe crashes. So bicyclists and crashes, 19-year-old men, 15 to 19-year-old men, and 20 to 24-year-old men are, and it could be that there's more men biking than women. We don't know. We have crash locations involving bicyclists. And then this is the non-rural. And the only thing I really want to point about with the rural, which made me very sad, was so if you don't know this, rural areas actually have higher accident rates than non-rural areas, which really surprised me when I looked into data. And I also would sort of love these adjusted for population, because then it would show like the population compared to the crash data is pretty alarming. But they have a pretty high accident rate. And as a person who loves driving on rural roads, it always makes me sad. But it is what it is. And it is probably because of the speeds, and it's probably because of the curves, and there's, other reasons. But the one that made me the saddest was it's a lot of younger people. Yeah. So these are the age of your drivers. For this one, she said, it's strange, but it's 55 to 59. It's like, okay, I don't know. But this is your age of drivers in fatal crashes in our rural districts. And these are your severe crashes. You got your 20 to 24-year-olds are still pretty high. And we talked a lot about drug impairment versus alcohol impairment. We had folks who work in law enforcement in the room, and they said this is like really fuzzy data. They're like, it's very hard to know if people are drug impaired or not drug impaired, and we can pull different data. Because I said, because of the legalization of marijuana, have we seen an increase? And they're like, this is really hard for us to really kind of pinpoint. So this is the non-rural areas. You see the 0 to 14, which is very sad. So the 0 to 14 is 11 people were killed, and 30 to 34, we had 8 people killed. So those were the crashes by age and gender in our rural areas. So it's probably people who are trying to be on the side of the road, who are trying to, get around that way, who don't have a car. You can't legally drive unless you're driving a tractor. And then it's the same with the bicycle. This is very sad to me, the 17 crashes. And then again, we have the 35 to 39. We have a pretty high rate there. So the other data, okay, this is the other I saw was sort of interesting. The day of the week across the board, as much as a lot of this is sort of kind of hard, fuzzy data to figure out, but the day of the week with the highest number of crashes is Friday. The time of the day with the highest number of fatal injury crashes is 5 p.m. And the month with the highest number of fatal injury and crashes is September. So the joke we all made was we should probably meet in September on Friday at 5 p.m. So I was like, should we all go out for drinks at 5 p.m. on Friday in September. But it is just something to know. A lot of the some of the thought processes, people have made a lot of decisions by 5 p.m. Their decision-making abilities have gone down. That's sort of some of the thought process, but this is why we do things like the Lincoln Avenue Corridor Study, because we know if you've ever seen that street at 5 p.m., it is wall-to-wall cars, and we have tons of pedestrians and cyclists trying to get around it, get through it. And we need to, when Friday, 5 p.m. in September comes along, we need to make sure we have created as safe of a system as possible for these people to get home. And by people, I mean everyone, from the people in the cars to on the scooters to on the bikes. We need to make sure everyone gets home safely. We had some discussion about what a fixed object is. Crash type with most fatalities, we're like, would that be a curb? They're like, it could be a curb. Then there were jokes about large rocks in front of homes. I guess in Muhammad, people landscape with a large rock and grass. I don't know what the rest of the joke was. I didn't really get it. But I think the rocks cause accidents. But I just said I'd rather have someone run into a large rock in front of my house than my house. So then, this is totally fuzzy data. The 2.6% percentage of drug or alcohol is actually what they caught, and 7.3% same. So it's sort of what they're aware of, what they can kind of figure out.
I mean, it's also kind of interesting because September is when we do the bike to work day. And like the save the lights dates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we said. We were like, is September because of the lighting changes? Is it because
And
of
new people.
school? Yeah, is it school?
Right, I know in August and September, I have to be much more careful. It's like, oh yeah, that's the third jerk in this community. Oh, it's September 12th,
Yeah, and I mean, because it could be too at the beginning of the school year. Parents are way more stressed out because now they have to add in all these new things. I mean, I just noticed. I mean, in a lot of the data, they also mentioned COVID. They said COVID, our crash rates just went off the charts. And I know personally, I would see as a person, I actually stopped biking during COVID because people were driving like maniacs. I mean, they really were driving like maniacs. Like they were blowing red lights. And I don't even think they knew they were blowing red lights. I think people were so highly distracted, freaked out, concerned about things other than driving their car that I mean, I'll just never forget it. It was just it was absolutely the strangest experience. Like I was crossing Lincoln Avenue at a hard red. Just never forget, this car just kept coming. Like it wasn't stopping. Like it wasn't slowing. And I was like, what is happening here? And I'd never seen that. So anyway, so this is Champaign County, 5 p.m. Friday, September. Just be aware. And it's also, that's the other question is, what can we do about that? What can we do about the data now that we have the data? And so Friday, again, it's your highest, 3 p.m., and this is the metropolitan planning area, the whole area. September, once again, pedestrians have the most fatalities. The most severe injuries are going to be turning. The non-MPA, Friday, again, 1 p.m., we aren't sure why, May. And again, these fixed objects. Well, there's definitely a lot of drug and alcohol stuff going on in our non-MPA, or they're just testing more for it, or I don't know. I can't guess. I'm not going to guess too hard on that one. So Friday, 5 p.m. September, most fatalities, pedestrian, fixed object, and turning. And we've seen this in Urbana. Look, Urbana, Friday, 5 p.m., October. Oh, we're breaking trend, everybody. October, and then pedestrian turning. And then that's cool, but. So then I actually thought this was kind of an interesting chart. Friday, 5 p.m., this is when all the jokes started happening. So there we go. I think this is the end. The next thing they're going to move into is public engagement, and they were just asking if we could think of any ways that they could share their public engagement survey. So if anyone has ideas of how they can share it, let me know. They said that they get the best feedback at things like farmers market or at events that are just sort of fun and relaxed, and they're not trying to get somewhere or do something. is where they get their best community engagement. And I guess they're going to ask people about what causes traffic crash, injury, and fatalities, unsafe corridors and intersections, driver impairment, driverless vehicles, sharing the road with bicyclists, experience with unsafe travel behaviors, using public transit. And again, this is RPC. Traffic safety concerns for people with disabilities, traffic safety concerns open-ended, and then they'll be going through different demographics. There is a link to a map which isn't fully functional. Well, it's kind of functional, but kind of not functional. But it's going to allow you to, when it's ready, to mark the map and say, this is an unsafe area, and, be able to mark it with ways that you would like that area improved. So I think that's wonderful. So add comments about a specific traffic safety locations, traffic safety issues, what travel modes have the issues, provide other details. You can like other people's comments, and then staff will compile and summarize all comments. So I think that seems like a pretty interesting. And I know I can guarantee you that when they're out and about, if people don't have a smartphone, they will be able to help people because they have an iPad, and they'll say, oh, where's unsafe for you, and where do you not find that working? And then they often will help you do that. So they were asking us the most effective forms of communication. Does the Park District have, what most folks in the room said was social media were their most effective forms of communication.
I was going to suggest, typically, we do neighborhood days in the park. We get a lot of people doing that. Jetty Roads Day is a big event.
They mentioned that one, yep.
Usually just events that either we put on or we're just happen to be there. We do use social media, but I don't think a lot of engagement comes from our social media.
Okay, cool. That is really helpful. Anyone else?
We use social media a lot because we do have an excellent marketing
You
team
have an
around
excellent
here.
social media. MTDs, yeah.
Yeah, we also have public hearings, but I think social media is where we got the most comments, feedbacks from students because they are the major population who use the buses. Yep.
And the other feedback somebody said was the QR codes on the bus. People are on the bus and they fill out surveys.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes flyers, on the bus.
Yeah, that's what they said. They said inside the bus, and yeah, on the wall. Yeah, they said people will fill out surveys because they're on the bus.
Yeah.
They're not driving. Yeah. And then the next questions were,
8:45.
okay, what community members are hard to reach? What agency are coming up this summer where we might engage? So that was where that was going. So that's it. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'll keep just giving updates as we move through this process. And so it'll just be every few months. And that's what we have. So
I had a question before
yes.
you close that. I think it was slide 40, page 40.
All right, hold on a second. I got you. Hold on, cancel.
It was one you skipped over that had a summary of the different, I think it was the total crashes broken out by each city.
Mm-hmm.
That one, right before it.
Okay.
Before that one.
Okay.
Right, so comparing Urbana and the other cities, I'm just thinking of the last talk that Audrey gave when she was here about how Urbana's crash rate was higher than Champaign's based on population. Is their data still showing that, is what I wonder. And I know they haven't broken it out by population, but I would think that would be of interest to me to see if what she had been telling us, about why we really needed the Vision Zero plan and if that is backed up by this data.
Yeah, because that was one of my questions. That was my question when I saw this as well, because I had just come out of a University of Illinois recruiting where we were seeing data coming in for the new student populations, and they had broken down the state of Illinois into all of its districts. And they said it might sound terrible to only have 2 people from this district, but that actually is on par with their population. So I said, is there any way we could see this data run differently? Could we see this data based on the actual population of the city versus just, because Champaign, you can't compare Champaign to Urbana, much less Urbana to Rantoul, right? These are just totally different populations. So, yeah, I agree with you. That was my question as well. Yep. And this is over, yeah, a 9-year period. Yeah, because Champaign's population is double, if not more. Well, it's a little over double our population. So I think what she was looking at, well, I don't know. Yep, I know what you're asking though. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Yeah, and we did ask there were a few questions that people had. Can we see the data run slightly differently? And Kevin Garcia was in the meeting, and he had some questions. And who was sitting in front of me from the city of Champaign? But yeah, folks had questions, and they were, can we run the data differently? And they will release all this data, and they're like, it's available in these different formats. So not that anyone's going to probably dig that deep, but I thought it was just really nice to see. I thought it was a nice presentation. It's nice to see us. At the end of the day, it's good to just see us thinking about this and talking about this instead of just accepting the fact that there are accidents and this just is what it is. And it's also really great to see that 10-year data from the University of Illinois district where they've done a lot of safety improvement work. And just to say it works, like we can make this work. We can make this work better for everyone. And we can make it work better for everyone. So. I would say the only other comment we all had was we all understood that whether at the bike summit or at this advisory group, that modes of transportation are going to continue to change and evolve. We are going to continue to see more people on electric vehicles, on electric bikes, on scooters. That is not going away. That trend is not going down, and we're just going to continue to see more and more people using alternative forms of transportation. So, for example, on Florida Avenue, the fact that they're putting in, I believe, a 10-foot side path is wonderful because we are going to start needing more space for all these different types of, that's why I was asking about with the new federal government standards, if they're even thinking, if they're thinking beyond the single occupancy vehicle. That was my question because I think that trend is changing.
While Annie's going back to her seat, I'll provide an update on the one thing I said I'd come back to, the traffic signal improvements, the audio devices. So right now we have that slated to begin construction in the first quarter of our next fiscal year. So that'd be between July and September of this year. That's tentative, but that's our plan right now.
Okay, in our last few minutes, who has announcements?
I have one from MTD. So the marketplace moving out plan, because we had strong feedback from the agency on the north of Market Street, that with the proposed routing, they will have no service at all, and which is really bad for their visitors who are like transit dependency customers. So we are talking about the alternative proposed routing, which is like serving the Salvation Army, like the east of Market Street, but without serving the marketplace property. So we will add this to the board meeting agenda, which is on next Wednesday, to talk about this proposed routing. And yeah, so that's where we are right now. Yep.
And the News Gazette had a nice article on it. Yeah, they talked pretty in depth about how the bus rerouting will cut off people from a variety of things that they need to get to. And yeah, so hopefully it won't have to be implemented, but we'll see.
And tomorrow at 7 o'clock will be the Ride of Silence, which is an international ride done on the third Wednesday at 7 p.m. And we will be riding quietly on an 8-mile loop through town in honor of cyclists who have been injured or killed on the roads. And the idea is to just make people more aware, and so they will keep an eye out for us.
I have a quick update just about King Park. We're on our third committee meeting for May 28th. This will go over draft master plans for King Park. I've engaged with students at Dr. MLK School, Urbana Neighborhood Connection Center, and also at our open house. We engage with parents and neighbors there as well, just asking opinions over amenities, new amenities, existing amenities. So we'll present the draft master plan at Jetty Roads Day for people to give feedback on. So if you guys are around, please stop by and check out the plan.
And that's really exciting, because isn't that like the oldest park that hasn't been updated?
Yeah, the playground's like over 20 years old, I want to say. So really exciting, though, for the new playground that's coming in. So definitely check it out.
Thank you for your work on that. Anybody else have any announcements? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think this was a great meeting. And does anyone have anything, before I close out, have any agenda items for next month or future topics that you wish to get on the agenda? All right. We will move ahead, and I'm going to work through these initiatives and organizational initiatives. And so we can just put this back on the agenda, and I just want to think through this a little bit to see how we can be most effective. All right, cool. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Meeting is adjourned.